brought to you by 1AAuto.com, your source for quality parts and the best service on the internet.
Hi, I'm Mike from 1AAuto. I hope this how-to video helps you out. And next time you need parts for your vehicle, think of 1AAuto.com. Thanks.
In this video, we're going to show you how to install fender flares on this Dodge Ram. This one's a 2008. This is the extension style fender flares. The procedure is pretty much the same for these for 2002 to 2008 Dodge Ram 1500s and 03 to 09 25 and 3500s. You'll need new fender flares from 1AAuto.com, flat blade screwdriver, Phillips screwdriver, utility knife. And depending on the hardware you use, you'll need a socket and a ratchet. In our case, it was an 8mm socket. You might also need a heat gun, double-sided tape, adhesive remover, sandpaper, and rust preventative paint.
Inside the wheel well at the bottom of the fender, we have some Phillips heads and some 8mm screws. Our truck has some hardware missing, so your truck may have more hardware or hardware of a different style. Regardless, the process of installation will be the same. Before installing your fender flare onto your truck, you want to take the supplied seal here, remove the 3M tape from the roll. You're going to want to do that as you go, little by little. Lay the edge onto your flare, flush with the bottom here. Just walk that seal on there. Just work that right along the flare, remembering to press your adhesive on the outside edge here. When you finish working the seal to the other end of the flare, cut it flat and start the next flare. Test fit your flare. Some of these larger flares will require you to relocate or remove this badge. There's a few different ways to remove these badges, but the safest and probably the easiest way is to use a heat gun, or if you don't have one, a high temperature hair dryer to heat up the adhesive on the back of the badge. Use a rubber scraping or prying tool, or if you don't have one, you can wrap a few thick wraps of electrical tape around a flat blade screwdriver to reach back there and pry it off without damaging your paint. Make sure to get it nice and hot without getting it so hot that it may bend or warp the plastic. When the badge moves easily, it should be warm enough that you can carefully remove the badge from the fender. There's a few different ways to remove this adhesive, from using a rubber razor blade to a plastic putty knife or anything that'll scrape and not damage the paint. One of the simpler methods is simply rolling the thicker adhesive up with your thumb or your fingernail, peeling the bulk off, and then wiping it with an adhesive remover. Our badge came off pretty clean, but if you still have remnants of the lettering from paint that hasn't seen sun in the life of the vehicle, adding a thin layer of wax to the area the badge was removed from can help fill in fine scratches and blend out the area so it looks smooth. Remove the adhesive from the back of the badge the same way. Hold your fender in place where it's going to go. We'll use a piece of tape to mark the highest point of the flare so we know where we can reinstall our badge. We're going to use some double-sided body molding tape on the back of our old badge. Make sure you press it on nice and firm so the tape actually sets. Using a sharp razor blade, cut the end flush with the emblem. Lay enough down on the other end to cover the badge completely. Same thing, trim off the excess tape here. If you really want to, you can cut out all the stuff inside of the badge here, but even from the factory, they just go right across it with a black tape, regardless of the color of the vehicle. Now that we're all coated, we can peel the backing off and adhere it to our vehicle. Remove the backing from the molding tape Make sure that the surface you're going to be mounting it to is clean. So we know that the bottom of our tape line here is above the fender. We can see that the top of our tape line is at the bottom of this body line. So we'll just go ahead and use the body line as a reference. You can use the residue from the old badge to see about how far off it was off of the door. Readhere the badge to the fender. And now we can install our flares without covering the emblem. Line your flare up on the truck. Our flare matches up with the bolt hole at the bottom, the top, front, in the 11 o'clock position. So we'll remove this Phillips head screw and these two 8mm. Cutting your wheel on the passenger side to the right or the driver's side to the left when working makes accessing this bottom bolt a lot easier. Install your fender and start the 3 screws by hand. We don't want to tighten these down until all 3 screws have been lined up and we know we have the fender in the position we want it. Line up your fender to where you want it and tighten down all your hardware. Our truck, like many trucks of all makes and models, has rust over the rear tires, on the wheel arch, on the side of the bed. It's very common for these to rust out and people to buy fender flares to try to cover over them and hide that rust spot. But what a lot of people don't do is take the time to remove the scaling and bubbling paint and coat the rust so the fender flare not only hides it, but keeps it from getting worse. We'll show you how to do that. Start by taking a fresh, sharp razor blade, cutting around the edges where our bubbling is to score it. We'll take a flat blade screwdriver, scrape away all the bubbled paint up to our score marks. All that score mark does is keeps that chipping controlled so it doesn't break off into our good paint where there's no need to scale it off. This guy's a little harder to see, but we do have a rust bubble starting right here. So before that gets worse and expands or goes through, I'm going to score those edges with a razor blade as well. While there was no rust under this bubble, that deformation in the paint would allow water to set in and eventually make our truck look like this. So we'll finish scraping off all our scaling. Then we recommend you sand it and treat it with the rust preventative coating or paint of your choosing. Be sure to install the rubber seal on the back of your fender flare. Check which holes match up. We have the 2 bottom in the front and the 2 lower in the rear. The hardware kit supplied with these fenders comes with self-tapping screws, tabs, and plastic retainers. You may need these in the rear at the tops and corners to help secure it into place. You can use your judgment to make them fit correctly. Install your fender flare. Install the 2 8mm screws at the bottom. Remember not to tighten anything down fully until you've lined up your flare to where you want it to be. We're going to use 2 of the plastic clips included with our kit to secure the bottom of the fender in place. After you've checked that everything's lined up how you want it, Tighten the rest of the hardware down all the way. After installing one side, repeat these steps on the opposite side for the front and the rear. With a little bit of effort, these fender flares line up and look like they came from the factory.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope this video helped you out. Next time you need parts for your car, please visit 1aauto.com. Also check out our other helpful how-to as well as diagnosis videos.